from the time in 1975 when I visited China to the present. There is no evidence of any support for the communist movement coming from China. I am aware, of course, that the traditional position from arising out of the Cold War was to deny any basis for any rapprochement, any relations with the communist giants, the two communist giants. But not only the time, but also the realities of life. That this thing will pass and naturally we will have to maintain relations with the biggest nation in the world. We cannot ignore this. This is the reality of life. China is as big as life. You cannot close your eyes.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. President. Why should the Philippines be immune from intervention by the communist powers on the side of insurgencies? We know they're doing it all over Africa. We know they did it all over Latin America. We know that they are doing it right now in Thailand. We know that they conquered by such means they tried to conquer South Korea. They did conquer South Vietnam. Why? What makes the Philippines sacred?
It's not sacred, but we are protected first by the China Sea. Secondly, it would not be profitable for them to come here. As far as I'm concerned, these are the two basic facts of life.
What sanctions do you exercise?
I beg your pardon?
What sanctions do you exercise that they are afraid of?
No, I don't think they're afraid of a small country like the Philippines, but it's not worth the trouble. It would cause, first of all, a rupture of our relations. And I don't believe that China considers that more advantageous. I mean, taking the Philippines more advantageous than, say, maintaining present mutual tolerance.
Well, then you do believe that they have renounced their ambitions for world revolution and a unified socialist world?
They maintain that they have not. I mean, the Communist Party. But I also maintain that the new leadership is pragmatic. Being pragmatic, it might moderate. I say might. I am not certain, I am not sure, nobody is. But by and large, these basic premises and assumptions seem to be accepted by the great majority of thinkers in this part of the world.
And you think that pragmatism is something that developed in the last few years, as distinguished from those years during which you did not recognize the government of Peking?
No, Chu Enlai was pragmatic. Deng Xiaoping was and is pragmatic. Deng Xiaoping is the symbol of continuity of the Chu Enlai pragmatism. And so I would say that the idea of perpetual revolution of Chairman Mao and his group of political ideologues were previously dominant, but that now perhaps they may not be that dominant anymore. That's what I'm saying.
That's it. Mr. President, when you decreed martial law in 1972, you gave as your reasons for doing so the decadence of what you call the old order. Could you describe for the benefit of Americans what it is that you found defective in the old order?
Well, the old order meant anarchy, disorder, rebellion. When I became president in 1965, I had warned that we were slowly slipping into an abyss from which there was no pulling out. And this was the gradual erosion of the authority of the government to enforce the law, to enforce existing law, not any new system of order, but the old system or the old codes of law, including the criminal code. Kidnapping was prevalent, so much so that the people never reported kidnapping anymore. The leftists were in collusion with the rightists, whatever those two terms may mean. I myself don't believe in categorizing people, but there was a strange conspiracy between those whom many of our writers branded as leftists and those whom they branded as conservatives, each one supporting the other for a purpose, and resulting in the immobilization of our economy and the impotence of our government.
Why should that have been? Why should democracy not have worked in the Philippines?
It was partially the government's fault. First of all, you see, liberal democracy, as the United States knows it, was the result of a growth of how many centuries, how many years in your country. All of a sudden it's transplanted to Philippine soil. Have you ever attempted to transplant an apple from the United States to a tropical country like ours? Well, it just won't grow. The reason for this is it needs time to acclimatize. This is a tropical climate.
How much time?
Nobody knows. I don't. We tried to get used to it, and my predecessor somehow convinced you that we were democratic, but we all knew that this was some kind of a mask which we had put over our face. We were trying to aid you. And yet we didn't have the basic requirements: education, distribution of wealth, economic equality, equal opportunity, and the most important, belief in them. Many of our people, especially the rich, didn't believe in democracy. They believe in maintaining their privileges and obtaining favors in government. They had private armies. But the great number of people had been used to a prototype democracy. Because in the olden days, even before the arrival of the Spaniards in 1521, the chieftains, especially the war chiefs, were elected by the tribes. And so there was some kind of a prototype, the beginnings of a populist type of leadership. And so there was this discontent, valid grievance on the part of a great number of our people. But there was nothing that they could do. And the only alternative was violence. To bring about a radical restructuring and bring down, let us say, those who had imposed their leadership, taken over from the old Spanish grandees, and joined up with the Chinese-oriented merchants to control both politics and economy in the country, were for the maintenance of the status quo. And we all knew that we were sitting on top of a volcano, a social volcano. Nobody knew when it would erupt. And there was no way of aborting it. It was just a matter of time.
If one grants that, if one grants that as an accurate historical analysis, and I know that a lot of people do grant it, the second question then is, in reestablishing order, has your regime done so by the use of a number of techniques which throughout your career you have criticized. For instance, torture. For instance, the denial of due process. Is this necessary to any rule by martial law?
There is no need to torture anyone, and we don't. It's not a policy. There may be exceptions, but these are all aberrations, and they don't mean complicity, conformity, or even the conspiracy on the part of the political leaders. This we disavow, we condemn, we punish. We punish anyone. Now, whether he be in the armed forces or a follower of the leadership, anyone who utilizes his authority or power to enforce by violence, unacceptable violence, except a legitimate conduct, any decisions of the government. But the important thing is, first of all, that while we sought to maintain order by dismantling the apparatus of the rebellion, we also sought to extirpate the process of rebellion, the valid grievances that may exist, by economic, social, and even political reform. And this is the rub, as you could put it, because the legalists, of which there are many here in our country, there are a great number of lawyers here, do not believe in the use of martial law powers for radical reform. They believe that we, or I, should stick to the old classical concept of martial law, which means consolidate the status quo, maintain it as it is. It may have its deficiencies. It is not for martial law to correct it. It is for another institution to correct it. And I maintain that it's not so. For if the purpose of martial law is to eliminate rebellion and maintain order, then one must eliminate the cause of rebellion. And the cause of rebellion may be economic and social inequality, injustice.
Well, what in the way of a reduction of that inequality has your regime accomplished?
We've given to every man the right of equal opportunity. Now, equal opportunity means greater liberty, greater freedom. For instance, the man who is held in bondage to the soil, he's not the equal of the man who has his own house, his own business source. By no means can anybody say that he is the equal of that. Can anybody say that he has an equal opportunity? His children will never be going to school. Well, we have given him the chance to send his students to school. Make them professionals, lawyers, doctors, whatever they may be able to attain. But we give them the opportunity now to develop their God-given and God-endowed faculties. And we also give them the opportunity to a decent and dignified type of life. We give him land, but that's not all. Land reform as we practice it here is not just a mere doling out of land and turning men into beggars. We turn them into respectable, dignified, self-respecting men. We teach them how to use the land to produce income and produce decency, produce dignity.
Well, I think a lot of people who have observed the Philippines during the past several years join in complimenting you on your land reform program. They do not feel that much has been accomplished, if anything, to help the urban poor.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. We have increased the minimum wage from 4 pesos to 13, 15 pesos. Granting the erosion of the value of the peso, say even up to 50%. We've trebled and quadrupled the earnings of laborers. Now, how can that be so? At the same time, we have increased employment from 8% down to 4.5%. Those are the biggest unemployment. The enemy of the poor, which is inflation, from 44% down to 7%. Now, how can anybody deny all this?
Well, the specific charge is that in the last 3 years there has been a net reduction in the real income of the Filipino working in the cities.
That's still stupidity.
It is.
Of course it is. It's ridiculous. They throw this around without any basis whatsoever. I can imagine people charging me with, say, fascism and the use of authority to perpetrate myself. But I will they may have a reason because I have to claim Marxism. But there is no reason for anyone to say that the Filipino masses, including the urban poor, have not been given a decent life. We are increasing our expenses for socialized housing, socialized prices for the consumer goods. Our cost of living here is very much lower than any other country in Southeast Asia, including our big neighbors. Now, at the same time, the more important thing is the Filipino, poor or not, now has pride in this country and has the equal opportunity to be anything. Be president if he can. Before you could not become anything else except perhaps remain as a janitor, a laborer, or a tenant. No, now you can aspire for almost anything.
Why didn't he have an opportunity before?
Because he was held back by those who were in power, including those who control the economic wealth of the country. We have increased the income of the lower classes of our people. We are creating a strong middle class. Before I became president, there was no such thing as a middle class. You were either very poor or very rich, no in between. Well, we are creating a middle class now, and a dignified middle class, not the middle class dependent on, say, favors from the government, but the middle class of small businessmen, professionals, and civil servants.
Well, in order to advance the program as you describe it, why is it necessary to deny to the press the freedom to criticize?
Of course, this is one of those allegations without basis. All we have done is, at the beginning of martial law, we imposed a ban on publications, because the publications were used by the rebels, by the rebellion. Publications, all media for that matter, was controlled from September up to December of 1972. After that, we lifted everything. Anybody could write any story, and the publishers, television owners and networks and producers organized their own media council without the participation of government. Now, the Secretary of Public Information, originally a member of the media council, was asked to withdraw and for that matter, the participation of anybody in government was terminated. And we left it to the owners of young media or those who were in publishing, producing, to organize themselves and to work out what they thought was necessary for media. To say that we are prohibiting any criticism is ridiculous. There's no such ban. In fact, we are criticized. I am criticized. And I accept it as a part of our growth. I grew up in the rough and tumble of politics and of trial law, and I am not that sensitive. I know, and I listen to criticism. If the criticism is well-based, I take action.
Well, what about the criticism of, using your figures, that there are 1,400 people in jail who have been there in some cases for 3 or 4 years, who have not been brought to trial?
No. There were 3,000 who were in jail. I released the 3,000. Then subsequent to this, the incidents in crime increased. Correspondingly, there were increases in arrests, but not for political action, but for violation of the criminal code. As far as we are concerned, and I would like to maintain this, we have not jailed anyone for political beliefs or political faith, especially the oppositionists. The oppositionists are still active here in the country. They have questioned my actuations openly. They've gone to court. Every act that I have taken, this referendum that I am calling for the presidency on December 17th, it's now before the Supreme Court. The opposition has raised it to our Supreme Court. If it were true that I am curtailing criticism here, then that would be the first thing to do, stop all of these actions in the Supreme Court, because that has become a harassment.
Well, are you saying, Mr. President, that there are not people in jail now who have not been tried, who are there
against whom there are no charges? No, I beg your pardon. Against whom there are no charges, formal charges. I have an order which is being complied with, to the effect that no one should be arrested unless he commits a crime in the presence of the arresting officer or man, because we have civilian arrest here, traditionally from time immemorial. Unless there is a two sworn statements about the commission of the crime. And immediately after arrest, he must go before an inquest officer and bring the accused, the arrested individual.
Well, under martial law, would it be a crime to challenge the legitimacy of your government?
No. They have gone and done it. They have challenged it. They have challenged it in elections or referenda conducted, elections for the Batasan Bayan. There is a statement to the effect that there are no elections in the Philippines. That's not quite true. We elected the members of the Legislative Council, and the contest about legitimacy of my government was an issue that was raised in the Supreme Court not just once but repeatedly. They questioned the proclamation of martial law. They questioned the legitimacy of the entire government. They questioned the constitutionality of my actions, everything, even the expenditure of public funds. These have been raised to the Supreme Court.
Would you say that there's, in any sense, comparable the crisis of the Third Republic in France and the crisis of your antecedent government? That is to say, when de Gaulle came to power, he came in with a new constitution that allowed him to suspend the legislature.
Except that, yes, it is true, except that in my case, the Constitution already provided for martial law authority. The Constitution, under the 1935 Constitution, under the 1935 decisions of the Constitutional Convention, provided, in case of invasion, insurrection, rebellion, or imminent danger thereof, when the public safety requires it, the President may suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus or proclaim martial law throughout the Philippines or any part thereof. This existed then, and I employed it. I had utilized first suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. After I used the armed forces, they were unavailing. And since they were inadequate to meet the crisis, I have to proclaim martial law. I asked Congress to do it, and they said, we don't have the power to proclaim martial law. I asked the courts to intervene, and the court said, we don't have the power. The power is in your hands. You assume the responsibility because you're president. So that was it.
Thank you very much, President Ferdinand Marcos.
Thank you.